I bet if you're a bigger guy that trains jiu-jitsu, you've probably heard, hey, stop using your size, train like a smaller person, stop using your strength whenever you're training. And that can be honestly very annoying and frustrating. So I'm sorry you always have to hear that, but I've got hope for you guys. So in today's video, I want to give you guys some ideas about how to train if you're a bigger person and why using your physical assets isn't necessarily a bad thing. We just need to get you pointed in the right direction. So stick around and we'll get into it. If you haven't yet already, make sure you guys hit the like and subscribe button down below. It does help me get seen in the YouTube world and helps me get spread to the other people and makes me in good favor with the algorithm. I know majority of you guys that are watching are not yet subscribed, so make sure you do that right now. First off, let's dive into the two big reasons why most people will say this to bigger students in jiu-jitsu. And I want to be clear, I'm not talking about students who are necessarily just large around the stomach or generously built, but students who are also big and bulky and strong as well too. So if you've ever been told that, hey, you're big, you're heavy, you're strong, this video will be for you. So usually there are two main reasons why people will say this to students in jiu-jitsu. The first one being is that the idea about whenever you learn jiu-jitsu is to learn the mechanics behind the techniques that are shown, to understand where the leverage is so you necessarily don't have to use strength to make the technique work. So usually what happens is if you're a bigger and stronger person, because your whole life you've probably been that way, you've been able to do things and bias yourself toward using your strength to a positive benefit. So you've always probably been the guy that gets asked to lift up something, to carry something, to do all of these things because you're a big, strong guy. So it's natural that whenever you're learning a jiu-jitsu technique for the first time, you just accelerate through it, or you just try to speed through it, or you just make it work with your strength because you have the luxury of being able to do it. So being able to understand that is crucial to what I'm going to give you guys later. The next factor is because of purely, it's just a nightmare to use you as a training partner. If you're 230 pounds and you're training with a 105-pound Sally over here, and you just put all of your weight and you just squeeze her and hug her and crush her, then there's a good chance you've now just ruined her jiu-jitsu experience, which I feel for bigger guys because usually they never want to be looked that way. They never want to be looked at as a person that ruined somebody's career. But the reality is you have that much mass, so you've got to learn how to deal with it. So how do we find a little bit of balance between this idea about being able to not use my strength, but also be able to use it to my benefit? So the first idea, talking about the mechanics and how we use the technique. So often what you'll hear people give bigger guys advice is that you need to train like a small man in jiu-jitsu. And I think I understand what people are saying, but this is the advice that I personally give my students that kind of maybe changes the narrative a little bit, that helps. Train jiu-jitsu technique like a small person. So what's the difference? If you train jiu-jitsu like a small person, that usually refers to the idea that you're playing a lot of bottom game and you're doing some techniques that can require a little bit more flexibility and to navigate through some small spaces. That's very challenging to do if you're a big, strong individual. Usually they're not flexible and they have a hard time fitting through small spaces. And they're usually very uncomfortable playing off their back because it's just hard for them to move all of their limbs that far around, do the guard and play bottom a half and play butterfly. Their limbs are long and they're big, so it's challenging to be able to do. So you want to train the technique like a small guy. What that means is don't force the technique with your strength. So even if you're playing top position, try to understand the mechanics of how you would hold this top position like a small guy. What are the key pieces that you need to make sure you're focused on in order to not let the person out? And then when you combine that with your physical asset and strengths, you become very challenging to deal with and you become a very dominant opponent. There's a reason why a lot of the most recent ADCC champions are heavyweight and are large individuals, because they have great jiu-jitsu technique and they also have mass behind them. There's a reason why the 130-pound guys usually don't win, because at the end of the day, mass and size does matter. So you guys have a very large asset in that way towards you. Just make sure you're training the technique like a small person, but you don't have to train like a small person. You don't have to do the techniques just identically like a small person. The next idea is when it comes to this weight distribution idea and not wanting to crush your training partners, that you definitely don't want to do that. You don't want to crush someone who is brand new in jiu-jitsu and just make them quit whatsoever. But here's an idea or a guideline that I like to give to my bigger students. If they are 20 to 30 pounds less than you, give them all your weight and crush them. That is not such a difference in weight. If you're 230 and it's 200, they can handle it. It becomes a little bit different if they're 230 and 150 or 140. There is some difference there. So usually though, what this does is when the big guy trains with usually all smaller individuals and they get used to pulling their weight, they're not actually able to apply their weight when they need to on someone who is their size or maybe even bigger, God forbid. So we need to make sure that you're able to understand where exactly your weight needs to go. So how can you do this? Well, like I said earlier, you could do it with the white belt who's a little bit smaller, but you could also do it with all the upper belts. So if you're a white belt that's 230 pounds and you're training with a blue belt who's 175 pounds, you need to crush that blue belt. And I know some of you smaller guys might be screaming at the camera right now, but the reality is if you're a smaller jiu-jitsu practitioner, you're actually losing benefit by not having them crush you. Because if you're training to be in a real life altercation or you hope you could handle yourself, you're gonna need to see what it's like when a bigger person puts all of their weight on you. Yes, are they technically skilled and the person in a self-defense altercation may not be? 100%, but learn how to deal with their weight. It just makes you a better jiu-jitsu practitioner. So if you're a bigger guy, if you're training with a blue and a purple belt outside of just being a giant, 100, 150 pound difference, then go ahead and crush them. Apply your weight. Don't feel bad for that because you're doing both of you an injustice. You're doing yourself an injustice and you're doing your training partner an injustice. If you guys are liking this type of information right now, make sure you leave me a like and a comment down below. Let me know what it's like training as a bigger guy, or let me know what some of your struggles are whenever you train with bigger individuals. The next idea that I recommend to my bigger students is making sure that they still develop some type of a bottom game. That doesn't mean that they have to exclusively play like the small man jiu-jitsu game that I talked about earlier, but you still need to be able to understand what you do from the bottom. The last thing you want to do is have some small guy like me who's 160 pounds just kind of run around you, wear you out, and then I mount you or get on top of side control and you have no way to escape. If your bench press doesn't work and you're not understanding the technique, now you're getting held down by a small person and it's pretty embarrassing. So you don't want to be that person. You need to understand some of a bottom game and learn how to play bottom and learn how to be offensive from bottom. So usually from the bottom, a lot of times bigger guys like close guard a little bit more because you don't have to be as flexible to play close guard as you do maybe butterfly guard or some other types of guard. So being able to make, close guard an offense and learn how to sweep or learn how to get back on top is crucial for you as a big guy. So that way you can still keep getting on top and still dominating. The last recommendation I might have for you bigger guys is how you actually apply your submissions or the ones that you choose. Like I said in the first point, training like a smaller person is very beneficial in this way because often you can get away with just ripping people's arms for like kimuras or arm locks and just squeezing and applying pain that way, but it doesn't actually mechanically work. It's not mechanically breaking the arm. Like, could you probably still do it? Yes, but the idea is that you want to understand all of the mechanics behind it and understand how everything works. If you ever have desires to teach jiu-jitsu one day, you can't just say, well, it works for me because I'm big, or it works for me because I do this. That is the last way to make money in jiu-jitsu. You need to be able to share information with all people of all different shapes and all different sizes. Like me personally, I'm 160 pounds, but when I teach big guys, I would think about, well, here's what I would do if I was your size. I would do these techniques. I would try this because I usually have tried them by this point and they don't work because of those things, or I have a harder time making them work because of those things. But I've also tried to teach big guys my smaller game and they have a hard time making it work too. So you have to understand there are different games for different body sizes, but still, whenever you're trying the submissions, try not to rip them. Try not to use your strength. Usually big guys like kind of arm chokes. They like guillotines. They like head and arm chokes. They like north-south chokes. They like Darce chokes, anacondas. They like things that they can get their arms around somebody and squeeze. Funny enough, they actually have a hard time doing triangles, I have found. Even though they probably have very strong legs, way stronger than their arms, they have a hard time getting their legs in the right spot and getting the flexibility in the right spot. So still develop your techniques like you are a small man. Don't rip them. Really understand the mechanics of how they work, because one day whenever you apply it on maybe someone who is your size or your strength, you still want that submission to work and you don't only want to be tapping out only small people around your gym. There's some food for thought for you guys if you're a bigger person in jiu-jitsu. Like I said, a lot of times you'll hear these kind of negative things, and it either makes bigger guys feel bad about training jiu-jitsu, or they're not even sure what they're supposed to be doing in jiu-jitsu. This gave you guys a few key things to really focus on and few ideas that you could start to implement in your jiu-jitsu game sooner rather than later. Thank you guys again for making it to another end of this video. Make sure you smash that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. Also, if you're needing a little bit of extra help, I do coach people online. I basically get you going in the right way. I teach you how to develop a training system, and this advice that I'm giving to you guys right now, I give that to you as well too. If you guys are looking for more help, make sure you grab my free acceleration guide down in the bottom. That gives you guys some ideas about how to build a training system. That way you can start training jiu-jitsu smarter. Also, if you're wanting to work with me, I do work with people remotely where we get you going in the right direction. We collaborate together and figure out what you best need in your training and get you pointed in the right direction. So if that's something you're interested in or you think would be a great resource to add to what you're already doing, make sure you hit the application button down below and you fill that out so that way we can get you guys started and get you going in the right direction. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.